while. This is gonna be a fun drive, if I say so myself. I'm gonna lower this down a bit. Yeah, I'm doing college stuff, and I'm just like, I'm a bit busy, but I can record my voice while driving. Like, nobody is telling me I can't do that. I just have my little laptop, my little friendly laptop put down, and I'm just gonna do. Oh, I'm just gonna go through here. I was talking with my sister about emojis, and as many of you guys know, emojis are becoming pretty mainstream nowadays. Like, they made a horrible emoji movie that garnered so much hatred that people hated it before the movie was even out. I've never seen a movie so critically acclaimed for being hated. Or would it be too infamous? Well, whatever. Well, me and my sister were talking about how emojis are eventually going to become like hieroglyphs. Like, I was like, I'm going to become an emojologist. I'm going to be able to tell you what the emoji glyphs mean. Like, there's going to be these buildings with emojis all over the walls, and they're going to signify a certain meaning depending on what's the first emoji. And it's going to be really sad. Like, I mean really sad. It's going to be so sad. And it's just going to be stupid. I don't know how else to say it. It's just going to be retarded whenever they decide to do that stuff. Well, I've been working with Kurt Hammett on Kerrigan Survival Fanmade, or as I like to call it, Kerrigan Survival. It's a pretty fun game. And I made this modified Abathur model, which has team color, and it's slightly toned down in terms of detail, which means it won't lag the game that badly when it loads. And the loading screen isn't too bad. I helped Kurt make a mod file for the map, and now instead of loading for like 15 minutes, it loads for about 5 to 6 minutes. I think my biggest problem with Kerrigan Survival is that they made Tharkus a Zerg hero. It's like, out of all of the characters you could have used, you used Tharkus, a defiler in the StarCraft 2 lore that literally nobody knows about. Like, Abathur is a really popular character, and everybody knows who Abathur is. If you're like a StarCraft player, everybody has been like, oh, it's Abathur. Everybody loves Abathur universally in the StarCraft community. I don't think there's anybody who hates him. He's just universally enjoyed by everyone. And I'm also planning on having Kurt and I add Sc2 in Fanmade as well. Sc2 is gonna be like Heroes of the Storm, Sc2, but he's gonna have another ability called Grappling Grope, where he gropes onto a target while grappling to them. It's like his massive shove ability, but instead of him pushing someone, he sort of just stretches his arm at a victim, and then he holds onto them really tightly, causing a stun effect, and then he just grapples all the way to the victim, and then is able to attack them. He also has Massive Shove, which can push an opponent infinitely until they hit a wall or a structure or a unit. Maybe just if there's a structure or a wall, because it would be kind of sad if you lost all of your momentum over a small unit like a Zergling. Whenever you're trying to shove someone, maybe massive units should be in that field instead of all units. But what can you do? Sokovo is also going to have infested units instead of Primal Zerg. He's going to have infested civs and whatnot. But unlike any other Zerg commander who's a hunter, he's going to be more of a defensive hunter. He isn't going to be like Zagara where he defends base, but he's going to have a lot of defending potential. He's going to be able to make outposts and stuff. He also has, I like to call it the glue stating arm, but it's just the hunting arm. I forgot what it's called. But that ability is just going to create and produce creep. So that Zagara or Abathur can either place Toxic Nest on top of the creep, or they can teleport over and creep over to where Stukov is. So survivors are gonna have to try to pester the defending, the defender into it. Blah. So if the defender makes stuff out of mid, the survivors are gonna have to pester the Zerg by making sure their creep tumors die quickly while Stukov is running around. Sokovo is gonna have very good mobility because with grappling grope, he's going to be able to travel across the map. Since the effect will only be applied to a wall or structure or massive unit on the other side, like on the end of the collision. So he's just going to stretch his arm, and until he hits something on the same cliff level he is, he's just gonna keep on going until he touches the edge of the map. Also, the Massive Shove ability will be able to push the victim unit up and down ramps. It would be funny though if they were pushed up a ramp and they just got pushed to the other side of the map, and then Sokovo just has a bunch of infested Marines on the other side waiting. So Stukov's going to be interesting. Abathur has a lot of techniques already. He has an evolution feature where if you click on a unit that's near him, he will evolve it, which is really neat. He has a really weak melee, but his anti-air is kind of as strong as Zagara's. He has this little corruptor symbiote floating by him all the time. He will also be able to place symbiotes on other units, like other allied Zerg units or structures, that give them detector and increased sight range. Also, symbiotes will have an anti-air and ground attack. After that, Dart is somewhere in between Sokovo and the big balance patch I'm doing with Kurt is going to be when Darkus and maybe the Helios is added. Like, a lot of people want Helios and Fanmade for some reason. Even though, yeah, it's kind of original compared to other classes. It's kind of like a direct strike unit builder. You have buildings. No, it's like Nexus Wars, where your structures can only produce one unit until that unit is dead. And if the structure dies, then that unit dies as well. That's what it's like. And that's kind of neat. Inferno Drake suggested that first. He was like, oh, there should be this angelical role that survivors should have. Like, he was talking about this book where this angel comes down, and the people were wondering if it was like an alien or demon, or whether it was something out of their spiritual depth, but you know. And then there's, but yeah. Then we have Tharkus, who's probably the stupidest Zerg hero ever added to an arcade game. Nobody knows who Tharkus is. He exists in the lore, but literally nobody knows about him. In the lore, he's just some defiler that gains sentience and the ability to control Zerg. Like, there's so much random stuff in the StarCraft lore. Like, there's this Ultralisk that got psionic spores attached to it, which caused the Terran group to worship it like a cult and give it sacrifices, and the Ultralisk would eat them alive and whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot of random stuff in the StarCraft lore that nobody really knows about unless you delve deep into it. It's just sort of like, there's this Tharkus, like, but Tharkus is literally just a defiler that gains sentience and the psionic ability to control Zerg. And then he made his little brood, and I was like, okay. There's this one Ultralisk called the Wise Old Torskalisk. Yeah. Thorax. That just made its own brood. And it acted like a mercenary Zerg group. And I'm like, how does that work? I thought the Zerg were all connected to one hive mind. Keep in mind, this is StarCraft 1 lore. So there's this weird thing where every Zerg unit in SC1 has a super variant. Like, there's a Zergling variant that has 300 HP and does like 10 damage, called the Devouring One. Where you have 4 of them, you have the Devouring Ones. And then you have, like, which are like 10 times the stats, the health stats of a Zergling. You also have Thoraxes. With one actually appeared in one of the Terran missions for StarCraft 1 BW. So they were trying to subdue the second Overmind, and a couple of Cerebrits were in the way. One Cerebrit made sunken colonies that were invincible. One, the orange one, I don't know what they did. I think they just made a whole bunch of Hydras if you attack with air. And then you have like the brown one, I think, that every like 2 minutes produce a Thorax, which is like a 800 HP, 8 armor, 2 times speed Ultralisk that's Overmind is like a giant city-sized organism. They just have a couple of medics giving it tranquilizers to calm it down. And after that mission, they just have the Zerg swarm controlled. Really wish in StarCraft 2 they kept the second person tone, because in StarCraft 1 everything was in second person. You were the general Cerebrit or of the Protoss general in each of those missions, helping out the characters. But in StarCraft 2 you're some invisible hand that guides all events that happen, which sort of sort of makes you feel like a foreign force outside of the game instead of some active player who's helping the other characters defeat the odds. Plus, they got too rushed with Heart of the Swarm and Legacy of the Void. I think Legacy of the Void wasn't as rushed as Heart of the Swarm. But yeah, a lot of people were a bit mad when Wings of Liberty came out that they didn't release all the other expansion packs with the game. Like in StarCraft 1 and BW, once you bought those games, you had access to the other campaigns. You would have to do a certain amount of missions though in order to do a mission pack, since some of the missions would actually come after certain events. Or they would spoil certain events. I think every campaign ended with the Zerg. Well, no, actually, the first one ended with the Protoss and BW ended with the Zerg. Something that really puzzles me in SC1 is that Tassadar, used both Kala and Void sources of energy to kill the Overmind with. But why didn't he just hit the inject button on his carrier? Like, I don't really get that. He sacrificed himself, but he could have just exited it. And why didn't they just have like a Nexus or a carrier hit the Overmind at warp speed? I don't get why the Overmind is so invincible that they couldn't just have warped a carrier into the Overmind. It's kind of that Star Wars problem where they had that one little ship going warp drive and it destroyed the whole fleet, or at least